So let's move on to the actual notes part of this lesson. So this is our last lesson for this unit. So this is kind of the put it all together lesson. So since today is the last lesson, that means tomorrow we're going to be reviewing, and then Friday is going to be your test. Reminder, that means for your test, that means your journal is due that day. Make sure you have those I can statements completed as well as your check understandings completed. All right. Remember, the I can statement is just you guys picking from that list that I gave you, that orange sheet in your notebook already, whichever ones you believe fit each section. All right. And you may reuse some of them. Okay. Now, with compositions, all right, it's basically what I just said earlier. It's literally just doing multiple transformations in a row on the same figure. So it's a transformation applied to a figure, then another transformation is applied to its image, and the result is a composition of transformations. So it's two or more transformations happening in a sequence. Now, glide reflection, you don't really have to worry about that. Basically, it's just saying it's a translation followed by a reflection in a line parallel to the translated vector. You guys don't have to worry about that. All right. So let's just kind of do a kind of review here. So first off, it's a little hard to see, but this is a vector for the translation. Now we're going to graph the segment DE. So it says at the points 1, 3, and 3, -3. So go ahead on the first graph, go ahead and graph that very quickly and label it as such. So 1, 3, that's D, and then 3, -3 is E. Now, we talked about the vector notation for transformations. What does that mean? So think about it like a point. What typically comes first in a point? X. So same thing with a vector. The first thing is your horizontal movement, all right, or your X movement. Whereas the second thing is your vertical movement. So for this one, am I going left or right anything? No. So no left dash right. And then for this one, am I going up or down 2? Down 2. All right, so that's exactly what we're going to do for the first translation. So I'm going to go just down 2 for both. So this is now D prime and E prime. So that's my first transformation. So this is the first one. Then we're going to reflect across the x-axis. So remember, when you reflect across the x-axis, what's the only thing that's changing? The y values are changing. So in other words, you're flipping the sign of the y values. So staying on the same x-axis here, this is my second transformation. D, the y value is at 1, so that means my new D is going to be at -1 on the same x value. So this will be D double prime. And then E is at -3, or no, it's at -5 now. So that means it'll be at +5 on the other side. So this will be E double prime. So the green image is our final image after doing 2 transformations on the pre-image. So the purple is the pre-image, The red is your first image, and the green is your final image. All right. So that's where your notation is very important. So if this were on the test and I asked you to do this, I would typically ask you to graph all of it. The way you denote it is by making sure that you have your primes in the proper place. So remember, for every image that you do, you add another prime symbol. So for example, after one, from the vantage to the image, it's just a singular prime. But from the image to the final image, you have to add another prime symbol, so it's a double prime. That's why there's two little tick marks here. All right. Any questions on that one? All right. So let's try number 3. So again, we're going to start with the same image. So we're at 1, 3 for D. And then 3, -3 for E. So still using the exact same image. It asks us to translate along that vector. What does that vector mean? Right. Since it's -2, we go left 2 and then down 1. All right. That's what we're doing for that translation. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. So I'm going to go left 1, 2, and then down 1. So this will be D prime. E, I'm going to go left 1, 2, down 1, E prime. Now, the next part that I'm going to do is that they want me to go 270 degrees clockwise. All right. So that means I'm going how many quadrants if I'm going 270? We're moving 3 quadrants clockwise. So I'm going this way. Now remember, you could remember the rule for this, but another way you can think about it is that for every quadrant, you flip the X and Y, and then you change the signs to fit the quadrant you end up in. So if we think about it, I'm starting with D prime. What quadrant is D prime in? 2. So if I go 90 degrees clockwise, what's my next quadrant? 1. All right. So that's the X and Y flip right here. So now we're at YX. All right. 180. Going to quadrant 4. So now we're back at XY. 270. I'm in quadrant 3. So now I'm at YX again. All right. So now, since I end up in quadrant 3, that means both the signs have to be negative. So when you're in quadrant 3, both numbers have to be negative. So that means I'm at YX here for D. So that means if it's 2, 2, we'll do -2, -2. And that'll be D prime or double prime. Both of them would then become negative. So just to kind of list it out, D prime was -2, 2, and then goes to D double prime, which is now -2, -2. Oh yeah, -1. So this would be -2, -1. So this would be right here. My bad. Thank you for catching my mistake. I do it all the time. All right. So again, If you don't remember the rules for that, that's how you can figure it out. The only thing you got to remember about rotations is that every quadrant, so every 90 degrees, you have to flip X and Y. All right. And then whatever quadrant you end up in, you just change the signs to fit that specific quadrant. So, for example, if you end up in quadrant 1, both sides would be positive. Quadrant 2, only the X is positive. Only the X is negative. So you'd end up with negative, positive. Quadrant 3, both are negative. Quadrant 4, only the Y's are negative. All right. So that's a way that you can remember it. And even if you mark it, this would be positive, positive, negative, positive, negative, negative, and positive, negative. All right. Does that make sense with rotations? Because I know the rules with rotations can get confusing. No, we're still doing E. So now let's do E. So where are we starting with E prime? What quadrant are we starting in? 4. So if I go 90 degrees clockwise, what quadrant am I going to end up in? 90 degrees. What's my next quadrant if I go 90 degrees clockwise? 3. So we're at YX. Another 90 degrees. We'll end up in 2, so we're at XY again. Another 90 degrees. We're in quadrant 1, so we're at YX again. All right. So now, for quadrant 1, I think both of my values are positive. So E is at the point, or E prime is at the point 1, -4. So its new point, if we flip everything and then change the signs, will be 4, 1. And then those would be our new images. Any questions on performing just 2 different transformations on a figure? Yes, yeah. So that would be the rule technically. So, like I said, with rotations, you can either go by the rules, but if the rules confuse you, especially between clockwise and counterclockwise, look at it from a graph standpoint, figure out what quadrant you're going to end up in, and then just remember for every 90 degrees, you have to flip X and Y. So basically, if it's 90 or 270, you're going to end up with YX of some form. If it's 180, you're XY still. And then you just change the signs to fit that specific quadrant. All right, does that make sense? All right, so let's look at the next page. So this is our all right. So this is our transformations. Now they wrote them in their function notation. So remember, function notation T, it's like 2 numbers XY, or you may see it as T with the vector XY. That's telling you your translation. Big R, and it'll say either x-axis, y-axis, y equals x, or y equals -x, or whatever other line. That represents your reflections. And then little r. Now, with little r, that's rotations. But if you see little r 90, that means rotation 90 degrees counterclockwise. But if you see rotation negative 90, that means rotation 90 degrees clockwise. So you'll only really see the negatives when it comes to 90 degrees and 270, because remember 180 is exactly the same either way. Now, the reason that is because it goes along with the flow of the quadrants. So, for example, if you look at this poster over here with all my quadrants, it naturally goes from right to left. So, it naturally goes counterclockwise. So, that's why if we follow the flow, that's why that degrees is positive. Whereas the negative degrees, if we go clockwise, we're going against the natural flow of the quadrants. So it means we're going backwards. Okay? Just note, positive degrees means counterclockwise. Negative degrees means clockwise. All right? Does that make sense? All right. Now, go ahead very quickly and fill and plot your pre-image for number 1. So your pre-image is ABC. All right, now, based off of the order that we're given, our first transformation will be a what? What part of x-axis? What are we doing? So we're reflecting over the x-axis. So reflect over x-axis. All right. And just so you can remember the rule, that means if we start with xy, we end up with x negative y. So let's go ahead and state the points. So for point A, does anything change? No, it's at the origin. What about for B? What's it now? 8, negative 1. And then C prime, 5, negative 5. All right, so take a minute, plot that one. All right, what's our second transformation? Right, 180 degrees rotation. So we're going to rotate 180 degrees. Now, does it matter what direction I rotate 180 degrees? No. Clockwise or counterclockwise, you'll end up in the same spot if you go 180. All right. So the rule is consistent. So if you start with xy, you're going to end up at negative x, negative y. All right, so basically you're flipping the signs of everything, but you're not switching the x and the y. So A double prime, what is it now? Still 0, 0, still at the origin. What's B double prime now? Negative 8, positive 1. What's C double prime now? 5, negative 5. Good. Or negative 5, 5. I said it backwards. My bad. All right, so take a minute and plot that. So, guys, this is how you think about these compositions. All right, you just have to do one at a time. And that's what I recommend you do. Just take it one at a time. Don't try and do in your head the first one and then go straight to the second one because that leaves a lot of room for error. All right, let's do one more. Okay, do me a favor and mark out this word clockwise because no. All right, so at number 2, take a minute, go ahead and plot the pre-image. All right. So, what is my first transformation listed here? Rotate 90 degrees where? Counterclockwise. Why is it counterclockwise and not clockwise? It's positive. Good. So, first thing, we're going to rotate 90 degrees counterclockwise. So, that means our rule, if we think about it in terms of going from quadrant 1 and then going 90 degrees counterclockwise. If we start in quadrant 1 and we go 90 degrees counterclockwise, where do we end up? 2. So, first off, we switch the y and the x. Now, what do the signs have to be for quadrant 2? Right, the x value, or what's in the x value place, becomes negative. So, you just wrote out the rule. That's how you can remember the rotation rules. Think about it in terms of quadrant 1. Like you start in quadrant 1. Okay? So, what will my new q prime be? Negative 3, 3. What will my new r prime be? Negative 4, negative 1. So, guys, with this one, start by flipping them first and then change the sign that you need to. So, for example, if we flipped it first, we've had 4, negative 1, and then we have to change the sign of the x value so that becomes negative 4. All right. What about s? What's s? Negative 6, positive 2. All right, take a minute to plot that. And guys, there's no right way to do this. So if you're more comfortable with finding the points first, then plotting it, that's great. But if you want to do the whole graph thing first and do it by hand that way, you can do that as well. And then state what the points are. All right, so either way, whatever you're most comfortable with. All right. Your second transformation is what? Right. So reflect across what? Across the y-axis. So if we start with xy, what happens? Right. The x values change. So negative x, y. So the y value stays the same. It's just the x value sign that changes. So what's my new Q point? 3, 3. What's my new R point? 4, negative 1. And S, 6, 2. And then we can go ahead and plot it. So this will be 3, 3. 4, negative 1. All right. Any questions on this? All right. So I'm going to leave the last 2 pages for you guys for homework. But I am going to at least help you out with figuring out what the transformations are, just to kind of review the notation. So for number 3, your first transformation will be what? Reflect over the line x equals 2. So remember, if you're just reflecting over a line, this is a vertical line. There's no set rule for it. Just physically draw it and then do the equidistant method. All right. So it's got to be equidistant from that line x equals 2. So that line would be right here. What's the next step? Rotate 180 degrees. It's 180. It doesn't matter the direction. What's the last one? Right. So we're going to translate left 10 and down 1. Then for 4, mark out that little CC at the bottom. It shouldn't be there. What's your first transformation? Rotate 90 degrees. What direction? Counterclockwise, because it's positive. Then we do what? Reflect over y-axis. Then what? Reflect over the line, y equals negative 2. So remember, that's a horizontal line, which would be right here. All right. So again, these last 2 pages, so 3 and 4 on this page, and then the rest of this page, so exercises 1 through 4 on this page are yours. No, stuff on the front page, don't worry about. So you really only got 6 problems for homework. So these 2, and then problems 1 through 4. So you guys got about 15 minutes left of class, so you could be able to knock out a decent chunk of it. Yes.
Do you have papers for tomorrow? Because I won't be here in class.
No, because we haven't made up the review yet. Are you able to come by like after school real quick? So
I have a volleyball game on Thursday.
okay, so
But it's home, so maybe I can stop by like
no, like today. Like, can you come by today? Like briefly after school,
I
or
should be able to.
or at the very least, I have fourth grade training, so your fourth grade teacher will let you ask if you can just come see me because I should have it by then.
Okay.
Hopefully. If not, I will. It'll be in Canvas. Okay.
Okay.